Good afternoon. We're recording this interview during an extreme heat wave affecting the Snowy Monaro region, with active bushfires across the border already placing pressure on emergency services and critical infrastructure. These are the conditions under which water systems stop being background utilities and become life-critical assets. Today's discussion is grounded in Snowy Monaro Regional Council's own documents, particularly the January 2025 Extraordinary Council meeting records and the December 2025 report titled Renewal and Refurbishment of Water Supply Reservoirs and Critical Infrastructure. Those documents acknowledge past failures, current operational constraints, and future risks to the current water supply. I'm joined by two experienced gentlemen, one from the mining sector and one from Her Majesty's Royal Navy, both industries where ignoring risks, deferring maintenance, or overriding engineering advice has historically led to catastrophic outcomes. This is not a political discussion. It's about practicalities, public safety, and what the council record actually shows. Good afternoon, Charles and Malcolm.
Good afternoon.
Charles, could we start with you? You're one of the public officers at the Snowy Monaro Residents and Ratepayers Association. You've had extensive experience over 40 years, I believe, in oil and gas.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to the region and why you care.
Well, I grew up in Queanbeyan initially. As a young bloke, school and myself didn't agree too well. I left to get life experiences. I started by driving across to WA and then caught a boat over to England where I got introduced to the oil rigs, and that was the start of my career in the oil and gas. From there, I worked in various parts from north of the Arctic Circle down to Saudi Arabia, into Brunei, Bangladesh, Australia, New Zealand, then back to Australia where I finally settled.
And so I believe you'd be quite qualified to give advice regarding water and critical infrastructure for this region.
Well, some of the projects I've been on, just to name a few, was the first one was the Northwest Shelf gas project. I was on the first drilling rig where we drilled that hole. I was on the Piper Alpha, which unfortunately, through various reasons, it blew up, and we lost some 94 people on that.
Thank you for sharing your experience with us today. And Sir Malcolm Rose, it's a pleasure to have you. I believe you served with Her Majesty's Royal Navy for approximately 23 years before joining the Australian Navy, and that you've also served in the public service regarding major procurement projects.
That is correct. I'm a chartered engineer by profession and have practiced engineering specifically in both navies. But the last time that I worked in our public service was associated with major procurement of complex systems and getting a good result for it.
And I believe you're a Cooma resident at the moment?
I'm a Cooma resident.
Great. So at the extraordinary meeting on the 24th of January 2025, which was last year, Councillor Ruben Rose, together with Councillor Andrew Thaler, moved a motion calling for urgent action following the catastrophic collapse of the Snowy 1 water reservoir in 2020. That motion was put forward on the basis that the reservoir had failed in January 2020, caused extensive downstream property damage, and had never been fully examined in an open council forum. The Snowy No. 1 reservoir was a critical piece of Cooma's water supply. It collapsed after being filled during bushfire conditions, despite known structural concerns. Instead of that motion succeeding, though, the usual suspects supported an amendment that merely noted that the reservoir appeared in an existing plan. And the original motion, which was moved by Councillor Rose and seconded by Thaler, was that the CEO urgently seek state or federal government funding to replace the water reservoir before the 25 and 26 summer period, the period that we are in now, and consider making recommendations to the council about expending some of the water reserve funds presently held by council and apply it toward the replacement reservoir project costs. That motion, as I said, was amended and instead was changed to just noting that the Cooma Snowy reservoir construction is in the current delivery plan, and that we should seek state funding to assist with replacing the water reservoir. So when you hear that the original motion is to do something, to prioritize a project such as the water tank. How do you interpret the difference between the original motion, which was to do something, and the amended motion, which was to merely note it?
As a professional engineer, I would suggest that both motions underestimate the complexity of the need. The need is that the water for this shire is very valuable and is highly complex to regulate. And what we have found is that this system is now at least some 60 years old and is decrepit. It's not just tanks. It's to do with pumping and the availability and where it's pumped from, rivers, reservoirs, or the like. It is also for catchment areas to be properly serviced with regards to supply of water. And very importantly, there's no point in putting a very good pump on to pump to the customers if the pipework system, like your arterial system in the body, is decrepit and has not been serviced. So it is a question of understanding, like any project, what the situation is that needs fixing in totality. And that is very big indeed for this large shire.
I just want to pause there for a moment. You used the word decrepit regarding some of our infrastructure. Could you give some real-life practical examples in this region where the water, especially critical water infrastructure, is decrepit or has been decrepit in the past?
On hearsay, we are talking round about 40 storage tanks. Some are below ground, most of them above ground. They are probably mostly concrete. All this is surmise because, generally speaking, it is not common knowledge because you can't get information out of the people who are doing the maintenance and owning these assets as to what the state is. Because for any project, you need to be absolutely clear of what the user requirement is going to be at the end of work. And we've only got to look at the increase in population, the increase in usage of water, and the scarcity, growing scarcity of water. And it is not just domestic water, it's for firefighting, it's for sewage, the like. All these are interconnected, and therefore that needs a professional approach by whoever is going to own these assets, that A, you buy correctly for replacement, including all the arterial and venous systems like your human body, and you work out where to put it, what kind of priority you work it. And we're talking about many years of investment. And the last thing you want to do is to put high pressure water in decrepit pipework.
Charles, did you have an opinion on the state of the water infrastructure in this region?
Well, at the 24th of January meeting, I made a presentation in a public forum, and it raised a number of issues, but one of the things was a simple solution to the whole problem. Now, if you look at what we have bushfires, we have drought, we have all sorts of problems. But in conclusion, I just had a simple suggestion, was to keep this council chamber free from political ideologies, supposed fears, obvious dislikes of others who do not share your views, and all councillors work together for the benefit of the community according to the oath instead of doing separately. Now, part of that is the obligations. The councillors must consider what is best for the community. If a tank is knowingly not structurally sound, it is up to the councillors, not only the engineers, but the councillors, to make sure that work is carried out. And to give one example, in the 19 December 19 budget, it had a figure of 920,000 to repair that water tank. They filled it without the repairs. That says to me there were, well, one could say negligence by not complying with the requirements to repair the tank.
I believe the official statement at the time, just after the collapse, was that the structural defects were not known at the time.
Well, if that's the case, somebody has not read the council's business papers.
Are you suggesting that the structural defects for the Snowy 1 Kuma collapse were known prior to the collapse?
Yes. Yes, indeed. There's photographs. It shows water leakage, but more importantly, Council's resolution on the 19th of December 2019 allocated $920,000 to repair the defects.
And that's about 1 month before the collapse.
Correct.
Which kind of proves the point that they did know that the Kuma water tank was defective before filling it.
Yes. There is an ALS report that shows that to be the case.
That statement is a little bit concerning because within the current recent report that came out last month, it reads, the risk of failure of the East Jindabyne booster tanks and the Pine Hill tank has an extreme risk, and as such we have reduced their operating maximum capacity to 60% to reduce hydrostatic pressure as a mitigation measure. The risk to supply for Berrydale is unacceptable currently, as the condition rating of the only working pump is undetermined and its service history is unknown in records or corporate memory. Do you think we've learned anything from the Kuma water tank explosion?
Personally, no, because 60% is still a little bit over half full of that tank. Who can guarantee that it will hold at that 60%? Who has verified that it's structurally sound at that point? So I'd say no.
And
As a systems engineer, and I was given the task to actually supply the next generations of users of water, I would be looking at a holistic approach to this. Clearly, we've had a warning sign of one tank collapsing, others starting to show crepidation signs. The whole system is a legacy system. There is strong evidence to show that arguably routine maintenance and surveys on a 60-year-old system have not been adequately accounted for and costed, and that routine maintenance procedures such as draining pipes and the like of sludge have not been done. Only records will show what the problem, how this problem has evolved over decades. It's going to be expensive, but there is no solution to the problem of assessing the whole of your body. If you have an arm that's not working for whatever reason, it will be sent to actually check your other arm and your legs and your internals.
And how can we be sure that this hasn't happened already? Out of how many water tanks do we have in the region?
Round about 40, I do not know, but it's of that hearsay. There's a lot of hearsay going around. And what is also hearsay is that because of availability of sources, be it money or technical expertise, the rolling program of maintaining, as you would in a ship, is just not done. If you have a ship that's 40 years old, it will probably sink.
And out of those 40 tanks or so, how many have been checked?
I believe somewhere in the region of 4 have been checked.
Sorry, so to confirm, we have around 40 large reservoirs of water in this region. We've had a collapse of one major one about 6 years ago. And you're saying that only 4 have been checked?
That is my belief, yes.
That just sounds incredible. It sounds like another accident waiting to happen.
It is our concern that the council are advising us that they're only going to fill up some tanks to say 60% half full or half empty, it doesn't matter what. And here we are looking down the barrel of a fire situation and a drought situation. These tanks should be full all the time in relation to emergencies, because it's not one tank alone services the area. There are all individual arms of a body of tanks. They are interrelated, and therefore you have to make sure that the whole servicing of your body is kept up to date. And we have on our books of things to do is the needs analysis of the growth of Cooma. We have 4 major developments in North Cooma area. Funnily enough, exactly the same area that the tank that exploded, and I use the word exploded because it's pressure internally that caused an outward flow. That is a legal definition. So the point is we need to have an assessment, a professional assessment by hydrologists, by mechanical engineers, by hydraulics specialists to understand the size of the problem that we, the ratepayers, are facing.
Perhaps it's just my lay understanding. I'm just a science graduate, not an engineer. But perhaps we don't need to care so much about water storage because we are so close to the greatest water body in New South Wales, the amazing Snowy River. Could it be that we can just pump it from the river when we need to? Can't we just trust pumps instead of these water reservoirs?
In the 20-odd years we've been here, I made a presentation to council, I can't remember when, but it's in the public forum, and I showed a photograph of the Snowy River. It was 1 metre wide. At one end it was 300 deep, and at the other end it was 200 deep. That was the Snowy River, and that would be, I'd take a guess, about 5 to 7 years ago when that occurred. But what we are looking at now is, well, with Berrydale, we're having all these new subdivisions put in place. If we cannot get the water to Berrydale, well, where does the water come for these subdivisions? And as Malcolm said, in a bushfire situation, how do you protect your home? How do the RFS get the water to protect the homes? That is the bigger issue. Why is our council, in my view, in Jindabyne, for example, you've got the SAP project there that is ongoing. But if also you look at council's delivery program, 22 to 26, it shows the works there. There are a lot of works to be done, but who's doing them? Where are we at with the planning, with the construction, or even repairing?
My point is, though, perhaps our focus is wrong, that we should just not worry about this because we have pumps today that can pump from the river if we need to.
From the river, I am not 100% sure how some of the towns work, but the pumps themselves from the river have to be a decent sized pump, which our council, I don't believe, have any capacity or pumps in situ to do that. So that would be a whole new project.
I raised my point about systems engineering. You need an extensive pipe work of supply from original sources. You need a network of pipe work to supply ultimately your taps. You need bulk supply for refilling fire engines and the like. And you need strategic supply in relation to drought. And we don't want to have a situation whereby infill of available building areas is actually going to exacerbate the size of the fire danger. You've only got to look at the Los Angeles fires of last year and the warnings of experts in relation to how quickly, in these very extreme conditions like we're experiencing today, things can get completely out of hand.
Just one point from memory. Wasn't the Dalgety river pump that was deleted and removed after it failed? Well, does it just run on bore water now? Is council looking at replacing that pump? Now, if all these developments are going on around the area, what are we relying on?
Another issue is the actual quality of the water itself. Council had a very big meeting recently in relation to fluoridation or not. The real issue is whether or not the water that is supplied is, quote, fresh or not fresh. And I've had a dam for 35 years and I've never seen it so low. And it's not a given that every year there's going to be a fantastic ski season. Because whilst you are talking about large dams and reserves, that is not a given over a 10 or 20-year program. Generally speaking, we have big issues every 7 years in regard to weather. So the council have actually instructed the USA to remove fluoride.
I think that was RFK Jr. that was making that recommendation.
So the point about it, back to square one again, we are dealing with a very wide, big, complex system, and any point of failure in that system will have huge implications for the area that system serves.
Have you heard any news about the Berrydale pumps? Any issues with the infrastructure in Berrydale?
No, I have not.
Been in the paper, a reference to it about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
I believe there were some issues regarding the pumps being unable to pump to a certain head height.
We are talking about very, very high pressures for domestic services. That's the issue. And you can't afford to have leaks. And many of the areas where these pipes are could easily be just leaking away. This is why I say again, you need to have, for the council purposes of decision making, what is the problem? What is the size of the problem? It's no use doing stopgap measures, just replace a tank. What size should that tank be? To what specification? Should it be plastic? Should it be metal? Should it be concrete? All these issues should be part of the life cycle and cost of ownership and how long is it going to be available.
I'll touch on your point about the pipe works itself. In the industry I was in, after every deep well, etc., we drilled, those pipe had to be inspected because some of the pressures we encountered, they were in the region of around 8,000 pounds per square inch. So we needed some really good pumps to pump and control. I remember one time we were in a well-controlled situation where the surface pressure was just under 9,000 psi on the gauge. So what we had to do basically was mix up these slurries, very heavy weights. You could say some of them were around 14 pounds per gallon. And you had to pump all that to control the gas that was in the ground. So your basic infrastructure, you've got to know it's going to be good. Same here, you mentioned the water pipes and the pumps. Why hasn't council been doing checks on them, inspections? That is a critical point. You need to have a schedule there, be it whatever it demands, but you've got to do those checks on them.
And maintain
Records.
the records, because we're talking of up to 6 decades.
But at the end of it, what would be the biggest failure? It would be council's reputation. In all honesty, that's only a small part of it. What had happened is, for example, the Berrydale community will have no water. So what happens then? Who trucks the water in to a community? Who pays for it? This is, in my view, it is lack of inspections, lack of following the rules or your guidelines on what should be done, the inspection protocol.
I believe the report confirms that, I think it is in Berrydale, that one booster pump has failed, and the remaining pump is, to quote, the sole supply, and maintenance history is unknown. In your fields, how would that be viewed in mining or in the Navy?
Unacceptable. It's as simple as that. Unacceptable. Actual professional negligence to allow a system not to be maintained. As I said earlier, if you don't maintain a ship, which is only made of steel, it will sink if it is not maintained. If you have a £4,000 per square inch pipe go in a ship or a submarine, people get killed.
In the oil and gas industry or any industry, it simply would not be allowed to happen.
So why does it happen in our region?
In our region, I believe it's the lack of compliance with the requirements. With these tanks, people's lives depend on them. With the pumps, people's lives depend on it. Now, surely, if industry can regulate to such a degree that we have had to test everything, have the certification in place, and our council can simply bypass it of not doing it, it's unimaginable. It's unacceptable. So somebody must be held to account and give reasons why this has been allowed to happen over the years.
On the good news side of things, we have on our doorstep a $12 billion program which covers the installation of pumps, pipes, water, distribution. I would suggest that Council could at very least consult with Snowy Hydro and some of their prime contractors and expertise to give assistance in relation to getting a quantum of the size of this problem. That does not mean to say they'll get a contract, but I am sure there's an act of goodwill or otherwise. There are people around who are doing the work now in relation to putting in pipes where there's never been pipes before, or replacing things so that they are tested to make sure they're safe. We've got the expertise and the equipment on site, so to speak, in the Shire to take advantage of that expertise, because make note, we are talking about highly professional issues in engineering and the water issues for this Shire. It is not something to be done piecemeal, like just replace a tank. Everybody feels better. Wrong, wrong, wrong. What kind of tank, what kind of technology, what kind of pumps, what kind of diameter pipes supplying water, what's the actual life of this new system going to be? What is the load to actually repair it or maintain it in a good operational state so its life expectancy can safely be extended?
I believe, Charles, you mentioned that one of the causes of these problems has been a lack of compliance enforcement. And do you think that could possibly be because there's just no accountability, that people can get away with these things?
In a way, I believe so, in the sense that if you look at some of the water projects in council's delivery program, why are they banked up as such? Council basically can get away with it. If you think of it, whatever council spends, it's supposed to go through the councillors at a council meeting. Now, if you get a majority of councillors who oppose whatever recommendation is, it doesn't go through. So in that respect, they can rely on the, indemnity, personal indemnity. Instead of doing it for the community, they may be following this ideological agenda, which in a sense is wrong. It's not for the community.
So I suppose at the end of the day, who pays the price for these failures?
Ratepayers.
And taxpayers.
And taxpayers, yes.
And so based with that, what should the community know that you think they might not already know?
The size of the problem, the quantum of it, rather than just focusing on a single tank replacement, the system itself, from the reservoir to your tap, needs to be assessed, because it is all legacy, or very much, nearly 100% legacy systems. And the disruption of putting in new pipework is a major cost override with regards to no use maintaining a road and putting on a new surface if a pipe's got to go underneath the road. Therefore, it needs an integrated approach to all services impacted by the network of legacy pipework.
Now, when you mention legacy, do you mean that our water infrastructure might be 10, 15, 20 years old? What do you mean by legacy?
I bought a house in Sharp Street, and the very first piece of equipment I had to replace was the supply pipe to the house, which was completely rusted.
While we look at the water issue, pardon me, we also need to look at the sewerage system around the place, but also the bridges and some of those crossings we come across. And what it appears that, to me, and I'll quote one example, is the culvert on Werrolong Road. When it was built by council, it was level. Now it's sunk in the mud. So
when you say sunk, you mean sunk by maybe 10 mil, 20 mil?
I'd go more like 30, 40 mil, 50 mil. Probably deeper, because if you look at the gauge, it's not in the centre of the sunk part. It's only at the start of the actual causeway. So really, where is the confidence in council's ability to build for a start, if that is what we have to put up with? Now, from memory, they've been out at least 6 or 8 times working on this. And if you notice the gravel on either side, that used to be flat. So what they do, bring a couple of truckloads of gravel and put it in there so you can drive it across. Well, and as you've seen, it's underwater now, and that is in drought. Imagine now if you get a bit of rainwater coming through, we won't be able to cross. We're landlocked. How do we get out? We cannot. Council approved the whole subdivision with only one road in and one road out, which is totally contrary to what it should be.
So may I make a suggestion? Because of the complexity of this issue of water, obtaining it, collecting it, distributing it, pumping it, and also sewage, as we've discussed, maybe we should be forming, and this is a huge technical problem to be solved by expert engineering personnel and contractors, very expensive and quite a long-term program, that maybe the issue of the governance of water should be made the purview of a completely separate, maybe council in titular form in charge, but it should be self-accounting and self-regulating with regards to the technical requirements, and the people required to do it would be experts at this particular technology, not your everyday person from the public service. They have to have, like you have had, Charles, a lifetime of experience in this big type of program. But physical and personal and financial accountability would be outside maybe the normal purview of the public service, and a self-accounting like Snowy Hydro, but accountable ultimately to ratepayers and taxpayers. Snowy Hydro at the end of the day could have been all done by public service. Arguably, I don't think so, because like Snowy Hydro, they got it rather wrong when it came to guesstimating what the issues were. It needs professional people, professionally paid, developed their expertise over a period of time. That would be the solution. Still accountable to the taxpayer and ratepayer, but it's got the technical expertise brought in from where it's necessary, because don't forget, we're also talking about large amounts of machinery to do this work, and disruption to other systems like electricity, as I have mentioned, like road culverts and the like. Therefore, it is a complex systems engineering issue.
Well, I totally agree with you. And I think the first issue for council is to accept there is the problem. And it is a big problem. Instead of trying to shield the problem, admit it, we do have a problem. It will cost this. You will then get the ratepayers and everybody on side. And that will regain some credibility to council's reputation by listening to the ratepayers instead of just being out there, we made the decision, you will live with our decision. That in some instances, not say in this instance with the water, it won't work.
I suppose, what expectations are reasonable for a community to have of a council managing something that is essential like water infrastructure? What expectations should the community have?
Well, in my view, from a personal perspective, you pay your rates. You'd expect the council to honour its commitment to, say, provide you with the necessities you're paying your rates for. And if they don't, well, look, honestly, you just start losing trust in them.
I think with something so vital to the community like water, it should warrant, in this day and age, its own organisational structure, because it's not a question of solely bringing in expertise, it's growing expertise as well over the period, not only in construction, but in maintenance, which clearly has been not properly addressed, and records keeping. It is a project in its own. You wouldn't run your heart with no maintenance or checks. Why should you do it with water, which is vital to your survivability?
Another point I'd just raise is, with council, they just seem to spend the money on consultants, outside consultancies. Consultancies are there taking the money. Yes, they may or may not have their heart in the project, but they'll get paid anyway. So, would it be, as we suggested earlier by Malcolm, to get specific people involved who have done that type of work, get them involved who can then advise, say, council or a committee of council on the correct approach, saving a whole lot of money in consultancy fees, etc.
I would call it, in my experience a situation appraisal, a frank, professional analysis of how big the problem is likely to be in the raw.
Mhm.
It is noticeable, I did a few calculations on my own water bill the other day, and 15% of that bill was for the use of the water. 15% of it was having an access charge, in other words, being connected, and 65% was, quote, on sewage. There wasn't anything on maintenance.
I suppose having an informed community is really important in this situation, because if people aren't aware of the situation, then they probably don't care, and if you don't care, then how are you going to hold the people accountable? So, I suppose ultimately, who holds the decision makers accountable?
From my experience, no one.
No one. I've never seen a public servant sacked for not doing a brilliant job. End of story. I think that what is needed is to get the recognition is that maybe these issues are brought to the new CEO's attention in relation to just how big this iceberg is, because an iceberg can sink the Titanic, and we're about to sink in a lack of water. The system is broken.
Gentlemen, I thank you for your time. Is there any final comments you'd like to make?
Pardon me.
No, I think it just has to be gripped by the council and briefed accordingly in relation to, I refer back to the fact that the Ratepayers Association, in conjunction with the Progress Association, wrote a combined paper which covered the issue is to show that we are a constructive organisations, which we support the CEO and the councillors as elected representatives, and to indicate where improvements should be made, we counsel during its transformation of administration and reorganisation. Now that was written and submitted on the 31st of May 2024.
That's 2 years ago. And I imagine council would have loved to have received this feedback, and they would have responded in a great way.
No feedback whatsoever. There was a short 5-minute meeting I had with the outgoing Mr. Hogan, and there was just no response. There's been no written response to 15 pages of submission.
That just sounds too astounding to be true, that you can submit a report to council outlining a lot of these issues and potential solutions, and they can't even be bothered to give you a reply.
Indeed. I'll read that again. This paper has been prepared from inputs such as the Snowy Monaro Ratepayers and Residents Association, Inc., Cooma, and the Progress Association, Snowy River Hostel Steering Committee, and other interested parties. Its prime aim and intent is to be constructive and support the new CEO and the councillors as elected representatives, and indicate where improvements should be made, re-council during its transformation of administration and reorganisation regarding effectiveness and productivity.
It's truly heartbreaking to hear that there are locals stepping up, trying to fill the gaps in the skill shortage in the council. And instead of being assisted or being replied to, they're being rebuffed or ignored.
Indeed. There were only 2 recommendations made in that paper. This paper, dated the 31st of May 2024, made 2 fundamental recommendations. In view of the first one was in view of the size and complexity of the problems, the organisational structure of the council should be reviewed to meet cost-effective ways of working that will demonstrate value for money. The detailed organisational breakdown structure should be made publicly available. I have heard that there is movement on this front. Secondly, the executive is responsible for costed and resource long-term planning detail and the upgrading of commercial practices together with the implementation of earned value performance management and methodology. That system tells you where you think you want to be and the costs and the schedule variances on the way during that journey. And big programs such as water tank and the system warrant that approach.
Malcolm Rose, Charles Kolano, thank you very much for your time this afternoon.
Thank you.
Happy New Year.
We've seen the rivers rise, we've watched the mountains burn. Through the darkest nights, we've stood, we've learned. They tried to break us down, but we're still here. With hearts of steel, we've made it clear. Peter fights for those without a say. Rolling Kylie, Doug won't walk away. They faced the heat, they've stood their ground. Now the tide is turning, hear the sound. It's our home, it's our fight. We stand as one, we'll make it right. We face the flood, the fire, the strain. Independence rise, we'll break their chain. Monaro strong, we won't be swayed. Truth and justice never fade. They make the rules, then twist them back. Keep the door shut, keep us off track. But we've got voices, we've got the will. We stand for the people, they never will. It's our home, it's our fight. We stand as one, we'll make it right. We face the flood, the fire, the strain. Independence rise, we'll break their chain. Monaro strong, we won't be swayed. Truth and justice never fade. No backroom deals, no ties of gold. The truth's worth more than what's been sold. With every voice, with every stand, we take our power back hand in hand, hand in hand. It's our home, it's our fight. We stand as one,